Are you guys not getting the notifications? Smigor, it's so sad. That was the last Montanica, and it was the best. Everybody that didn't, like I said, you should have sold all your stuff and came up to Montanica. I'm joking. But what if it was? Like, there's no guarantees, or I'm gonna, that's the problem when people are like, I'll do it next year, Lord. I'll go to confession next year. I'll make amends next year. Um, you've heard the story about uh I guess different demons were coming up, giving a report to the devil, and it's like, so what's your tactic to get the people? And one person says, well, I just get them, tell them here and get them really mad, and they fall into their passions and sin. Um, and devil's like, yeah, that's an old one. I've heard that. Next, the next demon comes and says, well, I get him to lust, especially in church. Get him to look at, some lady and have lust in their heart. He's like, that's an old one. We all know this. Right? And each demon's coming, telling this, some tactic and trick that they try to get people to uh, go for and fall into sin. It's the same old, same old. And then final demon comes and says, well, I just get them to say I'll do it tomorrow. He says, bingo. He's like, that's it. Procrastination. I'll go to Montanica next year. The devil's like, got him. Got him. What if there is no next year? Oh, I don't have enough money. Make it happen. There's always a way. Yeah, I have to struggle with procrastination too. Like I have, St. Paul says, redeem the time. Because it could be your last. It could be your last day. You know, that's why the last thing the devil wants you to do is make progress. So if he can get you to put something off, he's winning, right? Just procrastinate. That's why St. Paul says, redeem the time. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Let's build the kingdom. Don't wait till next year. I'll do it next year. I can't. That is not a solution. That's not an acceptable answer. I will not. Now, the thing is, it was so successful, so big. Um, we could move it to another venue. Um, that'll be a lot more expensive. Yeah, I was looking. Some of these conferences with the catering and stuff like this are like $600. So, what? I know. So I'm explaining to the people why we're not moving it. We're not moving. Yes. So there is a hotel conference, Copper King. Really nice hotels. We could get a deal. It would be expensive though to have that catered. Um, but that's not the real. I think it's big enough. People would even pay 600 to come up here. Um, not including the, well, anyways, the board sat down and said, but it would change the ethos and ambiance. There's something there's something about obviously having it at the church and the church hall that it's really blessed. And so we're maximum number. We had 175 people, and that's not including on Sunday when the parishioners, and only half the parishioners came because it was so crowded. So if we had all the parishioners came, you know, for liturgy we had 250 people and only half the parishioners came. So we're gonna cap it. We're gonna keep. We can't expand it. We're gonna raise the prices of tickets, right, to provide more and just make it better. And then you better start saving your money now. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you can do it because it's, as Dave pointed out, it just gets bigger and better every single year. It's incredible. Um, and so it's gonna sell out way early. So procrastinators will lose out. That's, what can I say? Yeah, Copper King's awesome. I had a, sometimes on feast days, especially, doing the Vespers, or there was some, like, over Christmas or Easter, all, because I don't want to drive back an hour back home at night and then drive back down in the morning. We'll get a hotel. But one year, got a room at the Copper King, got a really good deal. And I got a room on the first floor. There's an indoor pool, and then it had its own kind of like, you went out the door and then it had its own kind of little patio, like gated patio right at the pool. You could just sit and, walk out to the pool, come. But the rooms are really nice, and the Rib and Chop Steakhouse is like one of the best places to get steak and stuff like that. So, we had thought about that. We're like, that would be great. They have deals where you get a whole package and catered, but like, that would really drive up the costs. Yeah, wasn't that cool? Or, like, having the pool right there. You can hear my frog. Every morning I got a frog this week. Some good cold water. All right. So yeah, we're planning already now. Got to come up with a theme, new speakers. We'd like to rotate speakers, so we don't have the same speakers every single year. Um, and that's the other hard thing too, is like the bar set pretty high. Like, the more successful it gets, the more difficult it is to, like, well, next year I gotta do better and better and better and better. So hopefully, um, it will be blessed and continue to be blessed. It will. And then also, you know, obviously we have the abbot moving to the monastery this fall. The monastery is kicked off. Um, that's amazing. All of you went on the monastery tours. We had no monks there yet. You've been working on this for years and years before I even came up here. So, and having the abbot of Hillendar come out in late October, and it's finally come to fruition. And yeah, I won't give too many details on it, but um, we have an abbot. We have um, we have the abbot of Hillendar coming in October, to talk about how to speak with men who are interested to get this project rolling. Talk about how to, obviously, with the owner David Hicks and his ideas about how the rest of the construction's gonna go and the rest of it. So um, the monks, until the cells are built, will be staying at our. We have a parish house for like our iconographer and guests and stuff like that, speakers, and the monks will be residing at Holy Trinity at the house just down the street until we get them in the monastery. So we'll have really a monastic community at the parish. So, and Father Russell and I talked about this, and it's always been my dream. I'm glad that I didn't even have to mention it to him, that he saw it. What you experience in Montanica is our vision of what parish life here in Montana, Holy Trinity, can look like every single day. So not just once a year. People are moving here. They want to be part of this project, building the kingdom. So can you imagine what a wonderful blessing um, the conference is? And people are just like, I can't wait to go next year. Well, imagine living here and having like this intentional community together and fellowship and events like that 24/7. That's it. That's what we're building. And we believe that from Montana and what we're building here through the Montanica Conference, this will be a template and spread throughout the entire country. You want to know what American Orthodoxy is going to look like? That's what it's like, is the conference. We can have that permanently, and the fact that it'll be rooted in monasticism is connected to the monastery. There's no other place in the entire country that has that potential and has what's going on. So you want to come and experience that. You want to, there's several people who from the conference are now moving up here and looking for, house because they want to be part of this. So I'm very excited about that. That's what I wanted with the conference. Yeah, that's a great, David Bradshaw would be great. Um, let's see, what else do we have going? What other news? Thanks for everybody that tuned in to the stream yesterday that Patrick and I did. Our Gnostic heresies on the rise. We had that Gnostic dude come on. That was kind of a trip, wasn't it? What's crazy is I think, let me see something. I think David Hicks sent me a picture. How do I get this? You know what stinks? If I try to share this, for some reason I don't think it will share on window capture. Yeah, it turns blank. I have no idea why. I wanted to share you a picture of like their building of um the monastic cells. They um after the conference they built even more, so but for some reason it won't let me share that thumbnail. One of the things too that makes it harder, we're moving to more kind of practical, going out of the kind of academic. I mean, not everybody's an academic and a philosophy nerd. So bringing in these guys, that's why we're loading it up with more clergy. And so I know you guys like that, but, you know, first and foremost, it's about your spiritual development and healing and growing, and laity academics are good at academia, but pastoral issue, that's what you guys really need. um and so we might get maybe one laity academic or something like that, but we really need people who are clergy with and pastoral experience, to because that's what I want with you guys. I don't want to just have more facts in your head and stuff like this. I want you guys to be transformed. Man, that was really hard. I know people were like in the chat, like, go after. It's like, go after what? Like, the dude, you can't get a word in edgewise. I'm like, I can't get him on a single train of thought. Like, he's off into something else. I find that's kind of the most difficult kind of person to kind of deal with and argue with. It's just like, you can't get a hold of anything. And even if you try to bring him back, I mean, it was just red herring and just couldn't follow like trains of thought. Like, so, and just the most bizarro, absurd um things out of that guy's mouth, that it's just like even if he wasn't on drugs, I noticed Gnostics, and we talked about this in our class last night. Look, if you're a therapist or a doctor or an educator, let's say, and you noticed that somebody didn't have clear kinds of like moving from one point to one point, like there wasn't any kind of discursive kind of reasoning, that it was all over the place, they couldn't hold attention, they can't really understand, you would realize that there's some sort of cognitive impairment that's going on. um Maybe a mental disorder or something like that. What's interesting, apart from drug use, that you would notice like people get that way, is Gnostics themselves seem to be that way. They're extremely incoherent, unable to hold attention span, to follow simple lines of kind of, um, even linear kind of discursive reasoning. Um, and I've always found that really interesting. Uh, there's something very similar to like schizoid affective disorder, and type of like kind of that one with the kind of conspiratorial, uh, outrageous thinking, that one who suffers from schizophrenia or schizoid affective disorder. So, I've told you grew up with a friend that developed schizoid affective disorder, and it was really interesting because there's something I noticed about schizophrenia and schizoid affective disorder. So, imagine there's some event or some situation. Um, a normal kind of healthy mind would go, okay, what happened here? What's the reason for? And you would go through kind of a chain of reasoning, be like, okay, was it Did my wife say that? Did a neighbor write a letter to, like, you'd go through and be like, okay, it's not that, it's not. And let's say you're eliminating like the possibility, you're trying to explain some situation. Only after you like eliminated all the most reasonable possibilities would you get to something that might be further out there. They'd be like, I know it sounds weird, but through deduction, I ruled out all the other possibilities. As weird as it sounds, this is probably what happened. So that's kind of at the very, in a normal kind of healthy mind, that's kind of the last conclusion after exhausting all other possibilities. For somebody who suffers from kind of schizoid affective disorder, they jump to the farthest, most remote things. And the kind of more plausible things are actually not considered. And I find that really interesting. And it's a narrative construction. So they construct a story of how that actually might be possible or something like that. But again, the story itself is so unlikely and so highly improbable. A normal mind would only ever like even think that's possible after exhausting every other possibility. But that's their go-to. That's what and it's almost like, but if it's logically possible, and it's in one sense, it's totally incoherent. Like there's things that don't make sense in the story that don't add up, but it makes sense to them. But people have this. First of all, people in general have this problem, where it's if I could tell a story of how it's like something might be possible, then that's my argument. Telling stories, fictional stories, with there's some level of like possibility, is not an argument and justification for something. This is what you get with this guy, right? You told a story, an alternative story. Congratulations about sacraments and Jesus Christ and the early Christians. That doesn't mean it's true. And it's not an argument. You're literally just telling me, I made a story. You get this across the board with people, but these people really believe this. I find that really interesting. But the story itself is incoherent. Like that's why you notice you can't. And one of the problems too, why you know it's not true or there's no justification for a made up story in your head is, like I pointed out, you don't have any objective rubrics. It's my experience. So a couple different things is we're trying to point out, well, if that's the criterion for truth, then somebody else who has a contradictory position to yours through personal revelation and experience, you would have to say that's just as good as an argument and valid as what I'm saying. But if that's true, it means my position about my position is wrong, because I'm accepting that their criteria is correct. Furthermore, there's no rubric, epistemic rubric, for determining how do I know I'm not engaged in self-deception? How do I know I'm not wrong? It's always the experience. Now, he would say, oh, because I felt bad about stuff that I did. I was revealed this in my mushroom trip. Well, the problem with that is if it's experience alone that is the rubric and guide to tomorrow, you could have a new experience that your previous experience that you felt bad about something was actually wrong. Do you see? You're totally in schizophrenia. Like every experience can trump another experience. So you're in no man's land. Like you're totally lost and disconnected from reality. And I think that's really what's happening, is the reason why it displays mental health problems is because they're really losing reality. Like they're disconnecting, and they are the standard and measure of what's real. Think about a schizophrenic. What if the schizophrenic who's having either auditory, visual, or theories, you know, conspiracies about what the world really is, by definition, is unreal. Like it's they're hallucinations. They're a break from reality. Um, but if his criteria is correct, then schizophrenia is the way to go too. Like that's a good. Do you see the whole thing kind of collapses? And what we're trying to say is that orthodoxy not only is the only position that can coherently give an account of how knowledge is possible, how it alone is a justification for knowledge that's coherent, logically consistent, um, but also all the pieces work together, right? And there's an objective rubric. Like, you don't have to be orthodox to discover that orthodoxy is true. You can look at history and be like, yes, there was a really historical figure, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. There was really a church. There are really these councils. There are these. It's not completely collapsed in a subjective experience. And then what we're saying is an objective rubric too, is that, and all the experiences that the subjects have conform. So notice there is no consistency or consensus among Gnostics. They're all over the place. There's a consensus of paternum. There's a consensus in the experience of orthodoxy. That is an objective rubric. It's sort of like one of the things that priests tell, like if there's actually, demonic possession and infestation in a house or something like that, is it just one person that's in the house that is experiencing this, or are they all, right? Do you see that's an objective? So they're all having an experience in terms of their subjectivity. How do we know that it's objectively real and not somebody having a mental, break from reality, or, on drugs? Is that all the other people are seeing and hearing the same stuff. It can be objectively, empirically verified. So I couldn't get him to this. He just was off on another. As soon as you try to nail him down, it's just his mind can't hold tension longer than a goldfish. And it's off to the next stage. It's like, what do you do with somebody like that? I guess you just laugh. It's just so absurd that I couldn't do anything but just kind of laugh and get frustrated. I'm just like, you know what, let's just move on. Like, I can't handle this. Like, I know I'm patient, but that's really hard too. It's kind of like even with Eastern religions too, and Maya illusion, it's all illusion. And it itself is the Eastern religions are very subjective. It's the individual that discovers and breaks through the illusion and realizes we're all one. And but how do we know that's not an illusion itself? Like if your principle is illusion, and you can be you admit that you're deceived, how is it that you break through that and not know that that's just another? It's like inception, a dream inside of a dream. Like, how do you know you ever get out of it? Oh, because when it's revelation, you know. Well, that begs the question. And again, it ends up just being an emotive, qualitative, subjective experience, that which is a terrible indicator of, because it felt more real. I mean, like, speaking about dreams and stuff, like, the Cartesian question, how do you know that we're not dreaming this? Like, well, you don't know until you wake up. And then it's like, well, what's the standard? Then the question comes, how do I know I'm not in an inception, that me waking now is not just a kind of more vivid dream? And you don't have a good epistemic standard for saying, other than what feels more real. Then I can do stuff here in my quote unquote waking life that I can't do in the dream, so that must be a way. Like, that's not a great reason to, because I've had those kinds of inception dreams, where a dream inside a dream, where you wake up out of, and it's like, okay, now this is the real. And then I'm like, oh, I was deceived because I woke up again, and be like, oh, that was the dream. This is actually real. Oh, I'm still sleeping, etc. So, like, the qualitative feel of something, and that's what psychedelics do. This is why, people often report that the veil was lifted and they saw things as they really were. This is Aldous Huxley's "The doors of perception are finally cleansed," he says, and you see things as they really are. That the whole word etymology psychedelia is revealing, mind opening, right? That, oh, my eyes are open, I can actually see how things really are. But think about, from a demonic, you're now in the noetic realm, so you're uh you are open, actually, not in a good way, that to the demonic realm, in which they can easily manufacture a quote unquote reality that feels more real, and it's not. So what do demons get you to do? Invest real estate in imaginary places. That's what psychedelic. It's like, oh, this is where I'm going to spend all my time, is on the other side, the real side, when it's literally a manufactured subjective experience, a feeling. That's why it's so dangerous. And it gets you away from reality, gets you from working on. And notice that scientists and even the government knew this is why, that they were working on, even before psychedelics, working on drugs that would make you more suggestibility, keep you more open to. And that's one of the things that we learned about psychedelics and LSD. It makes you extremely prone to suggestion, and manipulation. So here's a guy that bases his whole religion on being able to be tricked, and um, that's why there's the feeling in psychedelics of, like, kind of return to, like, childhood. I don't know if anybody who's experienced it has that experience, but it's like, oh, I remember this feeling, what things look like. You're kind of brought back to uh, a more childlike kind of view of. But the problem with that is that children are really open to suggestion. It's really easy to manipulate children. I remember, let me give you an example. My mom used to, when we were younger, she had like a daycare thing at one point, and we do different events with the kids, and we take them to the mall, and kids' imaginations, like, are amazing. And like, myself as a young kid, I was older than them, but a lot older, but I had a lot of fun with, like, telling stories in imagination. So I told a story that, like, basically the mall was like a spaceship, and, like, you had the bridges going on too, and those things would like gotta get in quick to the mall because like every half an hour it takes off into like those bridges will open up and then the mall is a spaceship that will go up into space and then it'll come back down. So we got to make sure that we're kids totally believed it, dude, and they had a blast with. I was like, yeah, look, we can see the sky, see that we're above the. So psychedelics puts you in a state that's kind of like you might believe anything. All right, what? Let's see if we have any more super chat questions. Super chat questions, please send them in. Yeah, I find it funny that the guy was like trying to lecture us about psychedelics. I'm like, Patrick and I've gone through, like, we know what happens on. What are you talking about? Isn't that funny? We're supposed to be all about the. Well, that was our experience. Is that it's an inebriated, um, totally open to suggestion and manipulation and deception. Um, like, how are you, by the same standard, gonna say we're incorrect that this is not the actual path? That was actually our experience of like this is not a good place to actually be. And I find it so funny. I love how people say that, well, that's illogical. Do you even, I mean, that's why I couldn't get him to say what do you think something illogical is? There's a very strict notion of what. Now, something might be unbelievable, highly improbable, incapable of being understand, but that's not the definition of illogical. Illogical means a strict contradiction. You're affirming and denying something at the same time in the same way. So there's, even with the Harry Potter flying on a broom, that's not illogical. As I was pointing out, I have reasons why that's a fictional story and not true. But I don't hold the position that if somebody said Harry Potter is not fiction, it's real. I don't hold the position that's false because it's logically contradicting itself. So it's not an illogical story. It's logically possible. So these people don't even know what these terms mean. Furthermore, don't you see a big difference? Like I was trying to get the guy to realize, do you not see there's a categorical difference between a human being doing highly improbable stuff and the God man? The God who created the heavens and the earth, suspended the earth on the waters, created water itself, can walk on water. Like, that's not even highly like, that's exactly what you expect. The one who's over and above nature, who created it, can do things that are over and above nature and finite thing. Like, that's actually logical consistency. What are you talking about? Snow Cookies donates $5. If the demons get us to invest in fantasy, then how do we understand some of the greatest works of fiction? The Lords of the Rings, Brothers Karamazov. Well, you can treat like, because none of those people writing that thought that it was nonfiction. So there's nothing wrong with teaching truth through fiction. Truths. I think it was G.K. Chesterton said that sometimes we have to describe the water in terms of, the river flowing with, like honey to remind us that it actually is flowing with water. There's something in terms of analogies and fictions that's, ironically and paradoxically, are less precise that brings us back to kind of deeper understanding and precision about reality itself. So there's a use of the danger is if you think fictional stories are actually nonfiction. That's the problem. You know, if people actually started spending all their time in these fictional stories and thinking they were actually real, like, isn't that what the issue is? The problem isn't telling, creating fiction as a category, as fiction. Yeah, like imagination is great. I mean, look at the we just don't use imaginative prayer. But like nobody, there's no such thing. I don't think there's anybody out there that's like you shouldn't use your imagination and you know create imaginative stories and stuff like that. Like that itself is not. It's like what are you doing with it? For what? For what? I mean, everything is that way. What are you doing with it? To what end? How do you see it? Are you confusing category? Like all those are kind of important questions. Yeah, that's what's funny is comments. It's like, and I got him. At least I got him on that to follow. Yeah, art. Think about is the use of imagination, and that's a different. Like, would you say that art is non-fit? It's like it's not even the same category. Um, but art is mimesis. It's an imitation of nature, and it's a more flexible medium. It's not as rigid as let's say like analytic philosophy. Like it's a different category. All these things are touching on realities, right? And there's different mediums to do that. What's really great about art is it's really fluid and flexible, by which you can imitate things that are real, even in terms of like a story is truth through fiction, right? Is a mimesis, an imitation, right? In which you can display realities through something, the image or the medium that's not itself real, but it's representing and presenting a reality that's both beyond itself, or it could be even properly understood through a kind of rigid precision of language or something like that. Um, but anyways, I found it hilarious that I mean, he was contradicting himself all the time. So it's like, first of all, he didn't understand what logical is when he kept saying, "You think that's logical?" It's like, yes, it's logical. It's logically consistent that the creator of the universe, who stands over and above nature and literally sustains the laws of nature, stands above nature and is not confined by his creation any more than Jeff is confined. Jeff transcends his art. He's more than his art. His art reflects something of him. It's an energy, right? Energeia. But he's not reducible to his art. He's not neither confined, be like, well, I can't do anything beyond the picture, that I painted. I mean, that's ridiculous. God is the painter and sustainer of the universe, like, and his image is in his icon of creation that he paints. It tells us something about, but he's not reducible or confined by his iconographic creation. Like, what a stupid. Furthermore, if your standard is logical and common sense, and then on the other hand, it's the psychedelic experience, is just the opposite of that. That's what he admits. It's well, I do agree. It's not common. It's like no, it's literally the opposite of the common sense experience by definition. You're having an extra sensory, uncommon. That's the whole reason why you're taking those drugs. And it's not logical. It dissolves the kind of boundaries of logic. You know, you have synesthesia, you taste color, like categories are mixed. Even with some psychedelics that, uh, there's a violation of the cogito, right? You are now experiencing like what it is to be the other person as the other person and not yourself. There's like everything is Alice in Wonderland. All the proportions, like, I mean, that's what Lewis Carroll is given a fictional story of, like the breaking of kind of boundaries and lot. Like that's a psychedelic experience. That's your standard, and then you turn around and be like, "You're your religion is not common sense and logic." It's like, then shouldn't you be the first one to be like, "Oh, well, then I'm on board." He got really weird and rage quit when Patrick talked that it is an inebriating um, experience. Let's see. Which itself doesn't have a negative connotation. I mean, if you took that back to the Latin inebriationem, um, inebriare, um, that has its kind of historical roots in drinking something that alters. I mean, that's what inebriation is. That you have some substance that alters your normal mode of consciousness. Like that's simply what inebriation means. But like obviously he was really sensitive about, so it's not inebriation. And so he crashed out. Yeah, and then they'll do the same thing. I'll appeal to scripture when I want to make my case and deny it when to make a case against it. It's like, and it's totally do you notice it's if you are the standard of all things, the Pythagorean dictum of all things that are and that are, which is not, that's demonic. Like you are God. This is why it leads into, well, you are God. It's Christ consciousness. You see, it's exactly any of us that can have eyes to see can see like that's demonic. All right, what else? Dave's in the chat and Orthodox Discord. Let's go over this one. Somebody says the brain in the vat. Dave, remember we did. Oh, have we got? We haven't got to the brain in the vat yet. Is that? That's the chapter right now that we're in. Biv, it's called. It's like Biff from Back to the Future, but this is Biv. Brain in the vat. Um, somebody, but I hadn't heard this before. Somebody presented in the Discord philosophy chat that somebody told them that the brain in the vat's an objection to tag. So speaking about kind of these things of Gnosis and like that there's a logical possibility that, and this is used as skeptical arguments against various epistemologies and how we know, is there an external world? All of this eventually goes back to Descartes, right? When he's thinking about these skeptical questions so he can find a sure foundation and then reestablish a material external world, he has to consider, he believes, that it could be that I don't have a body, that there's extra, that this is all just kind of matrix, hologram, illusion, and so how do we make knowledge claims about anything external to our mind if it could just be everything's in your mind and it's all, the stuff that you actually think is real is just illusion. No. Somebody actually thought and tried to use this as an objection to like tag somehow. We couldn't know that God or any of these stuff about Christianity. This individual in here got really confused by this. And so people are going chasing, people are going back and forth. And the person was arguing, so Chase was like, well, you'd have to justify that. Now, in one sense, the skeptic, there's different notions of skepticism, a positive case and a negative. One of the strengths of skepticism is they don't have to make a positive case in these and make an argument, but merely it's a possibility. The guy was at least picking up on that. Now, that doesn't mean it's ultimately successful for things like tag. But I try to make it really easy, and this is what I said. God, the Trinity, who is the Lord and has revealed himself, is the necessary possibility for knowledge, or of knowledge, for knowledge. I presented the argument, like a logical argument for that. All right? Through the impossibility of the contrary, through the fact that it satisfies all the epistemic requirements that anybody's system would want, etc., etc. Okay. It's logically coherent and consistent. It gives an account of the appearances and of all things in nature, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But if the brain in the vat is an objection to tag, then we have not obtained the necessary conditions for the possibility of knowledge, and we can't be justified in making any epistemic claims. However, if we're not justified in making any epistemic claims, we cannot be justified in making the second order claim, because this is what this person is saying. This is one thing that skeptics often don't get. Well, I'm not making a claim. It just might be possible, and if you're making an argument that's necessary, you have to show that it's not possible, but necessary. Okay, at the first order, but you don't get out of this problem because you're now making an epistemic claim about the possibility. Is it a possibility? Are you not making an assertion that's even a meaningful or coherent statement, that it's not verbal diarrhea? Of course you're assuming and making a statement about that. That's an epistemic statement at the second order, right? That can't be true, or we can't know it. It can't be justified if there is no conditions for truth, justification, and knowledge. Okay? This is pretty easy. So you can't actually even say it's a logical possibility that we might be brains in a vat, because that's a positive statement, epistemic statement. And if you can't make an epistemic claim that it might be possible we're brains in a vat, or like I said, even the question or statement's meaningful or coherent, then the brain in the vat objection is not an objection to tag. Pretty easy, huh? So, what's happening with people? Like, why is it that something that easy is very confusing? People should be able to see that. Eric Vigilant Jones, 999, Father bless, thank you so much. God bless you. May the Lord bless. Yeah, David will come back up in this chapter in more detail, but uh, it's because people get confused. You're listening to the wrong people. Just like the demons, something that should be clear and reasonable and straightforward becomes convoluted and you get all confused because you went and talked to somebody that you shouldn't be talking to and listening to. And then you're like, we have to answer this. We have to. This is why spiritual and ethical formation is so important and foundational. You don't, as scripture says, you're not blown with every wind like a leaf. This is what's happening with all these people. Well, I went onto the server and I talked to a bunch of people I shouldn't be talking to. And this happens, we've got this issue on X. People you shouldn't be talking to, these Latinizers and heretics, people pushing penal substitutionary atonement, infant damnation, Augustinian, soteriology, all these different things, and they get all confused. And oftentimes these people find themselves outside of the church. Why? Yeah, I won't mention, but there's issues with Latinization with that guy. So anyways, I won't go into it. Sympathies towards Rome and Latins. Why is it that you spend time listening to the wrong people and getting... It's because there's a level of intellectual, spiritual, and ethical immaturity. That's why us clergy work so hard, and even in the Discord with the people who aren't clergy, there's always this stop, don't read that stuff, stop talking with these people, go talk to your priest, work on the fun, learn your catechesis. A lot of these people are just catechumens and stuff like that. You're demonically being pulled out of the fundamentals and being distracted and investing real estate in imaginary places. That's once you work on the kind of fundamentals of spiritual and moral formation, you'll realize these guys are a waste of life. These guys are a bunch of jokers. Like, don't, again, we have a prescription. It's not infallible or perfect, right? Any clergy or somebody with a blessing can err, but the opposite way is absolutely destructive. And you can have a way of managing this that, look, I'm going to listen to people who have an Episcopal blessing to actually teach on these matters. Somebody could be right with maybe they have a great art, but like, you don't know any more than you don't know if somebody can actually do heart surgery, even if they didn't go to med school, just because they said, well, I've studied this. Maybe, like, it's not a risk I'd like to take, and it doesn't mean that, everybody that went through med school doesn't make mistakes or something like that. But the other way is just disaster. It's so risky that why would you do something like that? Oh, but when it comes to philosophy and theology, that's okay. Like, those rules and that way of thinking doesn't apply. What's the matter with you people? Like, that's crazy. So go to trusted sources. Go to people who are under accountability. I put myself under authority. I'm under a bishop who's blessed my apologetics and ministry. I'm under a clergy advisory board. If I say something incorrect, the clergy are gonna like contact me. I can't just say whatever I want. So, you guys might like somebody on so like really like listening to. First of all, it's time management. Why are you listening to somebody even if they say, "Well, I don't have, I'm not representing You're representing orthodoxy. If you're Orthodox, you're representing Orthodox. You're inevitably going to be talking about go to something that's safe, like go to an official. First of all, you should be talking to your priest. First, it's not that you can't. I mean, we're here online talking and stuff like that in a virtual world, but obviously that's no surrogate for the real relationship that you have with a spiritual father or confessor or your local priest. Like, that should be your first and foremost. Anything that you're reading or doing should be checked and respect that in light of that. But we live in such a consumerist. Everybody likes their favorite, content provider and stuff. Like, what are you doing with your time? We got to do classes on time management. Your life would improve so much more if it would just be like, I mean, think about even when something isn't bad, it's just neutral. I mean, think about the enjoyment of a decent movie at the theater, playing a video game that's not a degen, playing a game, going to see music or something like those are all fine. But if I'm spending all my time and I'm not doing other things, so it's all about time management and putting first things first. That's really even things that are just morally neutral, right? Pleasures, enjoyments, attitudinal pleasures, and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's fine. Like saying you can never play video games or watch movies or something like that. Enjoy online content from your favorite I'm not saying that. But what are you doing with your money and your time? Seek first the kingdom of God. Your parish is your family. That should be your your actual family is your priority. Then the parish, right, is your secondary family. Those should be your priorities. It's fine to, even watch memes, stuff like that, but like, or another Orthodox content creator, but like, are you putting the kingdom first? Are you going to liturgy? Are you confessing? Are you serving, your brothers and sisters in the parish? That's where like everything else will be added. And so time management, maybe that'll be Orthodox Montanica's. Well, we already did seek first the kingdom of God. I talked with Bishop Maxim. One of them was I might be let us attend, let us be attentive. I say that more than anybody. And yet I struggle with being attend. Call it to mind, be present, focused on the kingdom. Because inattentive is what we talked about, the distractions. Even if things that like aren't necessarily bad. Am I being distracted? Is it impacting my first things? That's what we got to. So here we live as Orthodox Christians. Let us attend, let us be attentive. Wisdom, let us be attentive. That is wisdom, to attend to wisdom. And so Bishop Maxim thought that was, this what I was just talking about. It might be, let us be attentive. That's what I'm literally talking about. Because Bishop Maxim, I was talking about my frustrations with your grace, like, he's actually his eminence now, but I said it's hard, I'm the deacon. I say more than anything, let us be attentive, and yet I'm a hypocrite. I'm constantly getting distracted by stuff, and at least I realize that that's happening. I'm taking it to confess, like Lord, help me become more and better. Can't become better unless you like identify where I can going wrong, where I can improve. And so, anyways, he was like, "That's a great thing." He's like, "You should do that for next Montanica." So that might be it. Like, I mean, it's nothing definite, but that's one thing that's been on my mind is let us attend, let us be attentive. All right, any more super chat questions? And just so you guys know, I know you guys say that it's just kind of habit, but and look, I'm not upset. I'm not making any judgment or something. But if you want to, it's sort of like things that people do, lady, that are incorrect in the liturgy. I'm like, it's there's a correct way and are incorrect. It doesn't mean that like um people are like the priests are judging you and upset or anything like that. It's like, yeah, we a lot people just don't know. Um, but if you want to learn and become better, there's things it's like this is how you venerate an icon. This is the standard. Not a big deal. If you don't do it, that nobody's gonna be like, oh, you broke the law. Okay. Um, when the priest comes out and says, "Peace be with you," uh, technically you're not supposed to then cross yourself because he's giving you a blessing with the cross. Because when you this is blessing yourself through the cross, the sign of the cross. So theologically in the liturgy, what that technically would mean is you're blocking the blessing and usurping it through your own blessing. You're blocking the blessing of the priest when he, um, same with the deacon when he's sensing you technically. But like, I'm not upset. I'm just like whatever. Like, but if you wanted to know, be like, yeah, I'd like to do better and be consistent with like kind of the traditions of the church. That's what you do. You bow to receive a blessing. When the deacon's sensing you, he's blessing you with the censer. Um, that's blessed to the priest actually. Before I can't even I can't do anything without the priest, right? And the bishop. My authority comes through them, who are my higher authorities. So even the priest, I can't just pick up a censer and start blessing you. It's actually through the authority of the priest who's only has the authority through the bishop. He I put the incense on. I say, Father, bless this incense. So he's using his authority. I give you the authority. Same with the vestments, Jack. You just throw my vestments and cuffs on. What do I have to do? I have to take them to the priest. Father, bless their reverence to carry on. Now I have an endowed authority through, not of myself, but of the priest and the bishop. So then the authority of the blessing of the priest is given to me to go out, just like I could take the Eucharist and serve you, right? I can't consecrate it. I can offer it with the priest. Thine own, I actually hold up and I offer it. I can't do that by myself. Only when the priest is behind me saying the words, we offer unto all and for all. Thine own, we offer unto thee for all and to all. But I'm actually, it's why the deacon's a priest, a type of priest, and in the priesthood. Like, he is offering it, but just he can't do it by himself. Like, he is blessing you with the incense, he can't do it by himself. He is in row with the authority, not of himself, of the priest. Okay, so both the priest giving the blessing or the deacon through the priest, the censer, you bow to that. That's what. All right. Therefore, when you say, even though I am a father, I'm in the diaconate. I don't have the authority. I can't do everything that the priest can do. So when you say Father bless, just again, not a big deal. Just so you know, I can't bless you. That's why when I have the blessing to serve the chalice, if a catechumen or non-Orthodox comes up You know how the priest will, you know, uh, I give you a blessing, right? And he blesses the chalice rather than because I can't partake. I can't do that. So I'll have to send somebody over the other line. Like, I can't give you the blessing for. I cannot actually say middle. I cannot give the blessing as a deacon. So when you say Father bless, I can't actually do it. Um, I can say, and we do say, for example, if you've ever been to Reader's Typica or Reader's Vespers, at the end, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and ever, into the ages of ages. Father bless. Notice you don't say that with a deacon. May the Lord bless. You call upon the Lord to bless. So I could do that. May the Lord bless. I could say, may the Lord, but I can't bless. Okay, just so you know. Not a big deal. It's not. But just so you know, I can't get blessings. I can't consecrate the Eucharist. Yeah. Hush Tones, donates $4.99. I would value attack on time management. Yeah, it's really good. I used to give that in my classes too, in college. Because sometimes I really struggle with juggling multiple hobbies. Yeah, we all do. Like, especially me, I have ADD. I had to learn a lot of the stuff to be attentive and manage time because I'm totally disorganized and have problems with time management. What if the priest brings out the Eucharist and the chalice and blesses? Yeah, don't. If you want to know how to do, like, I wouldn't cross myself. Like, you're receiving a blessing in the sign of the cross through actually Christ. Not a big deal if you don't. Um, the other one that does kind of irritate me, I never say anything. I never call anybody out, like, and be like, that's wrong, you shouldn't do it. It's just that people ask me, like, how are we supposed to. I personally don't like when the Father says, we lift our hearts to the Lord. He's standing in front of the altar, taking all of your prayers, and he's lifting it up. And then everybody raises their hands. I don't know if that's actually, in terms of rubrics, allowed or not. I don't know enough about that. It seems strange to me, and I'm willing to be corrected. You know, some priests are fine with allowing. But again, for me, there's this kind of, could be they're lifting up with, maybe that's the argument, we can lift our hands with. I would like to know with that, is that a practice that was practiced in the Orthodox Church? Because my worry is, we're all converts, a lot of us from evangelicalism, they just love lifting their hands all the time. And so I'm like, I don't know if we should be bringing in practices that, even if, like, technically it's not wrong, like, it's not a big deal, like, shouldn't we just be keeping what's always been kept? I don't, even with the Our Father, right? I get cringe with that. And maybe it's my own Protestant PTSD. That's true. Like, I'm willing to be corrected. Don't know exactly. I'm not an absolute authority on this stuff. So, and maybe it's just my Protestant PTSD, but it's just like, it just feels so evangelical, charismatic. Now sometimes I do, right, as clergy and part of the priesthood, like when I do the entrance prayers, sometimes the priest does that sometimes too, right? Puts their hands out in an oration, right? But imagine if, like, I was like, I started moving beyond kind of normal practices, and I'd be like I started doing that in the altar with the priest. Oh, we just, yes, Lord, Jesus Christ, amen, right? Like, it's not that that's theologically incorrect or bad or something, but like, it's another kind of like, it's foreign to kind of orthodoxy. Like, you'd be like, why are you maybe it draws attention from the priest. For example, when the priest, the part where I remember my line, I can't remember. The cherubic prayer. It's always hard for me to find because I don't use this book here. I use the one, my Romanian book. So it's hard for me to find the exact. Okay. One second. I'll tell you something that I do. I'm constantly thinking in terms of hierarchy and what that means when I'm doing something in the liturgy. Yeah, it's so weird. It's so hard for me to find in the, because I don't use this one. Yeah, the priest goes like this. Let us, who mystically represent the cherubim and the seraphim, sing the thrice holy hymn to the life-giving Trinity. Now lay aside all earthly cares. And then I say, may we receive the King of all, is invisibly escorted by the host of hosts. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Then he repeats it. Let us who mystically represent. He holds up. What do you notice that the deacon's not doing? I'm not like, why? Because it's the priest who's doing that. I hold my Ararian out because that's in the ancient world calling to attention. Like when an orator would speak, why do you see this with like Socrates? He's like this. He's calling to attention, right? But I don't want to call attention over and above the priest. The priest is doing it. I'm kind of pointing to you, so I'll hold it, my Ararian out like this, right? That I'm calling attention to what's happening in the altar here, but not over and above the priest. So I'm actually cognizant of like my hand gesture, what I'm actually doing with, right? So that everything's in its right, proper order in the liturgy, and it's not overriding the priest. Does that make sense? Yeah, the orans. That's the Latin. Oremus, let us pray, is the... And I guess there's this huge, because all this weird charismatic stuff's coming into the Roman Catholic Church. You see these Roman Catholics now speaking in tongues, these priests. And I saw on Twitter that the Roman Catholics are debating this whole the Orans posture, that they, like even the traditional Catholics, realize that people should not actually be doing that. So, anyways, not a big deal. It's not like, it's just kind of like, again, it makes me feel kind of cringe and weird because it's, in Protestantism, there's an anti-hierarchical, egalitarian, like we're all just doing, everybody has the equal authority. And it's improvisation. It's like, I just feel led. I'm just going to, it's often not ordered. It's led by emotions in the, charismatic and evangelical. Obviously, a Lutheran would think you're a freak if you started doing this stuff, right? Like, or probably a Presbyterian says, so not all Protestants are like this, but, yeah, I realized that earlier. That's why I left all that stuff, and went into kind of more traditional, even before coming into Orthodoxy. I want well ordered worship that isn't just, improvisational, spontaneous, emotion led. I want hierarchy, right? I want things in the right place. So when I see people, or, you know, lift up their hands, people say a lot of this comes in also through, especially the Antiochians with the Arabs. Now, I don't know when that started emerging, but I do know that there was a problem with Arabs in the United States, in America, that this is from an Arab's mouth, or should I say Arabs, that, like a lot of kind of cultures, sometimes there's shame associated with their culture, and there's this romanticization of like everything American. That's like, I should be speaking to like I'm speaking to the choir, right? Everybody should kind of know that's a real thing. And so what happens is a lot of times when these cultures come over, they want to leave behind their kind of traditions and adopt Americanism. And this came in a lot with the Arab community. It's a huge issue in the Orientals and the Copts, that them adopting evangelical practices because that makes them feel American, like that. So I don't know if that was the origin of, and then it went back to the Middle East too, and that kind of, I don't know that, but it just, it's cringe for me. Like, it's just like I prefer not to see it, but whatever. I'm just the deacon. I'm not gonna tell people, and even if it was a priest, I probably wouldn't be like, stop it. I'd probably just give it upgrades, be like, hey, this is the reason why we do what we do, if you want to know. Anyways, good. Yeah, Catholic charismatic. There was a great documentary I saw like 7 years ago, about uh charismatic stuff coming into Roman Catholicism. It's huge. I think a lot of this stuff came in. I mean, think about this. The Roman Catholic Church was infiltrated with oh my gosh, I just blanked on the name. One second. What's the kind of Marxist social gospel kind of, why am I blanking on? Liberation theology. Where did liberation theology take off? South America. And spread through. What about charismaticism in the Roman Catholic Church? Where is that most prominent? South America. Isn't that interesting? The craziest clown masses are like in Brazil. Like those, it's just so I find that kind of interesting, that we could speculate, why are South America, Latin Americans so prone to that kind of stuff. Obviously, I think because of the political history, um, I could probably answer why liberation theology and why they're kind of targeted. And these are all kind of intelligence operations too. Yeah, remember? There we go. Bishop Tilda Swinton. I don't practice. Um, I think also kind of like some of the, like how the culture is with kind of in a lot of the Latin American countries, kind of the way they express themselves and stuff like that. There's kind of already an evangelical, charismatic kind of that. I mean, for crying out loud, they have carnival in Brazil. Like, so of course they're gonna be like, we'll just make the church into carnival. Like, so I imagine, but it is Cleveland. It's a great art. Like, I love how the criticism of from Roman Catholics to Orthodoxy, you're not united. It's like, yeah, we are. Liturgically, theologically, yeah, we aren't having, we're not doing a bunch of different services that aren't actually the ancient liturgies, right? Like, that's always been kept. There's a conformity. We're on the same calendar. We do the same liturgies. We switch to St. Basil at the same time, the liturgy of St. Basil, right? We're all on board here. We don't have liturgical innovations, and we don't have different spiritual practices, right? There aren't the mystics and then the scholastics and the Franciscans and then the Dominicans, these different competing schools. Isn't that funny? But that's Roman Catholics always criticizing us Orthodox for no unity, when it's like, whack, we are unified, right? Not unified as a papacy, like, but again, that's not the only type. That's just a superficial unity, because look at your church. You have all these different types of devotions, different spiritual practices, different liturgical rites and expression. You have clown like, so it doesn't matter if you have a traditional like, the fact is this stuff's going on and it's all over the place, and your message got deleted. Who deleted? You don't need to delete. Cleveland Antiquity isn't, I hate to use this word, Cleveland Antiquity is an ally. There's my postmodern jargon for today. Maybe somebody just did on accident. I've done that too, where I've tried to delete one of my, I misspelled something and ended up deleting somebody else's. So I was like, I'm so sorry. Shout out to Joseph Sambra. Check out his channel. Joseph probably should be getting our wonderful talk. Thank you, Joseph, for having me on. Shortly. By the way, Joseph, I'm sure you probably thought about this, but Joseph's previous interview, the latest one before he's putting ours up, was Father Sebastian Craffy. Craffy. I reached out to Father because we have a common history. I didn't know this until I watched your stream, Joseph, that he went to Thomas Aquinas College. I was like, I went to Thomas Aquinas College. And it was cool to be able to like talk. We both converted to Orthodoxy. He's in Phoenix, Arizona. He knows my dear friend and Father Thomas Frisbee. And so anyways, we're gonna do something too. I like that he has, this similar intellectual background and formation and appreciation of the great books and these things, and that we're both Orthodox and clergy. It's really cool. Quantum UQ 499. It's no surprise at Diagnostic from yesterday took mushrooms apparently from a church in South America. And by the way, isn't that where Watson went to, and then eventually brought, I think Watson did a tour, went as an anthropologist in some of these tribes, like took the sacred mushroom. Had the psychedelic experience in terms of anthropologists, and then brought back Aldous Huxley, who then through the mushroom then was like introduced to mescaline, and then this is when like the research in terms of academia and what, like, I forget what years, early 50s, when they went down there, and the shamanism and stuff like that, that then they brought that stuff into the academy, and then supposedly by happy accident, why am I blanking on his name? Uh, keep reading. Albert Hoffman, the Swiss chemist, accidentally synthesized LSD, and then that got into academia, and then the CIA got involved, and Timothy Leary, and then what was Ram Dass' old name? Richard Albert, and Timothy Leary, and their connections to the CIA and stuff. So that's interesting. So is that true? How is it that I need to figure? We shouldn't have bots deleting or have any access and control. Is that possible? Is there something I can fix in here to make sure? Nobody but mods should have the ability to. So something that's concerning if bots can get in and actually delete messages. What if like they could ban people? Shoot. Anyways, thanks Joseph, everybody. Somebody will throw in Joseph's channel there. See if I can pop it up. Tonight is bluegrass night with the string beans. Looking forward to that. It's gonna be a busy week. Busy next couple weeks. Joseph, I'm gonna link you in here. Also, check out Cleave to Antiquity if you haven't. Got it. Cleave to Antiquity, I just got your email. Yeah, let's do it now so I don't forget. Sorry, I forgot to. I'm so bad at that. Forgive me. I know a lot of you guys follow me, and then I forget to follow you back. So just being inattentive again. Gosh dang it. See what I mean? All right. Next. One second. Let's find some news to cover. Man, I really enjoyed the office hours tutoring yesterday. We covered so many topics. I even cried. You find that you're crying a lot more and emotional. Are you all emotionals now that you're Orthodox? I find that I used to have my emotions on lockdown before I had. You don't. Man doesn't show shed tears. What is it in the Big Lebowski? Strong man cry too. Strong man cry too. Epistemology told me uh, that when I was first coming to Orthodoxy, a man who can't cry can't see God. Yeah. See, that's what's great about my courses. I mean, we really got to get more people to sign up. Uh, I'm gonna officially get that accredited. I'm talking with somebody, but right now you can contact your local college. You know, especially if you're taking courses. We have students who, um, because I do teach this exact all these courses. It's the same syllabus, same educational software at the university. I'm just teaching these apart from the university, so we have more freedom. I can teach you better. But in light of that, because I'm actually a professor, um, colleges will, many colleges will, you just have to ask, accept those as transferable credits. So that's great. Um, you know, that's an advantage of being an actual professor and you can working in a university is that you know what I'm offering is not just simply online content. It's like no, it's an actual college course. It can be transferred. Um, but better than that is ask anybody the office hours that you're promised 1 hour a week that itself is worth the price. And you get we always end up going like 3 hours and we go over some deep, heavy stuff. A lot of we were doing we even got into philosophy of mind, panpsychism. David, what was the other thing we went into? We covered a lot of topics. Supervenience. It's interesting that it went into philosophy of mind, and that's because we were going over some objections to tag and stuff like that, and the meaning of intention, the two different meanings of intentionality, like me and a mind, direct, because you'll see in philosophy that term used in two different senses. One is just there's a person who has a mind that orders certain things to a goal or an event, does something, an action, right? In which you say there was intention behind it, like the person had an intention in what they were doing. Um, so that requires that's a mental state at least. Then there's intentionality, which is a property um, uniquely predicated of mental states and uh, propositions and beliefs, that it's about something, whereas physical objects aren't. So my proposition that I believe that Denver is the capital of Colorado is about something, a place. The tree outside being green is not about anything, like physical objects. That's a different. That's funny. I just put on the YouTube. Raw steaks, $20. I was in Dr. Zachary Porch's stream yesterday, and he mentioned you. He said hi to yeah. He has a really good series. He does have a really good series. I was just thinking about him the other day, and I like what he's doing. Um, I may reach out. We're still taking it slow because I want to do it all right. Uh, Building and launching the Orthodox University, online university, um, where we're actually bringing on, I'm in conversation with Orthodox professors with PhDs, um, because rankings do depend on how much, like if a college, how many PhDs to masters. So at this point, only actual Orthodox professors who are actually PhDs. You know, Zachary has a PhD, so I like his work. I always liked working with him when we were at the Vatra camp in my episcopate. So yeah, I'm like, anyways, good to hear he's doing well and that we're both thinking of each other. So supervenience. Oh, subvening is there's things that supervene and then right super over and then subvene is those theories are extremely complicated. Like philosophy of mind is one of the most difficult, and we are kind of going over that and theories of like panpsychism. David Chalmers is a panpsychic, uh, and like Dave was saying, on the surface it just sounds ridiculous that everything has mind uh, at different levels. Uh, but you get into the details of it, they're actually complicated, sophisticated theories. I think it's wrong, but like, you know, but I think didn't Bonjour actually say we were going over something recently, David, that phenomenalism, I think, that it's amazing how many theories are actually kind of counterintuitive like that. And yeah, you have these philosophers like argue these positions where it's just like, I think Bonjour had mentioned that about phenomenal. It's like so unlikely to be true, like this theory, yet people. I also think I forgot to mention. I actually think there's a link. Now, there's a couple different. I think in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy it mentions this. The seeds might have been sown with Leibniz monadology. A really bizarre, cool theory, but like bizarre. I think the article mentions that, but I'd actually have a sneaking suspicion too that there's some Eastern influence um, from the Eastern religions uh, that come in, and also, I mean, there's things like I'm gonna call it kind of coalesce. Ideal. Why is it there's a rise and popularity right now among physics and idealism? There's quantum idealism. There's a lot of physicists that are like have a Berkeleyan quasi version of idealism. Well, I mean, think about it, from the Eastern religions too. It's all one, like right. It really is just consciousness, and so you couple that with a sophisticated theory that you get from like idealism and Berkeley and stuff like that. That stuff has come. I even think I read an article that even Einstein was influenced by Berkeley and idealism. That you see why these theories get popular for like physics and philosophy of mind, like panpsychic. Like, I have a sneaking suspicion it's connected to that. Yeah, we were trying to figure out The problem is with a lot of these, there's no just one theory. So when we're looking this up, the answer to the question is panpsychism compatible with materialism? Well, it depends on what theory of panpsychism. And in order to do that, you got to bring in other theories to support that. Token identity theory, type identity theory, functionalism, all these different things. Possibly a limited materialism. Dennett's like, that is kind of the philosophical bulldogs that have to be brought in to like support these positions that might actually seem counterintuitive. Then I was wondering if emergentism was, we were wondering if emergentism is compatible with panpsychism, and then there's some people where it's like, yeah. But what we did decide, those versions couldn't be compatible with one another because emergentism was created to refute materialism. Then we had the emergentist John Searle, who's a biological naturalist. Okay, so this is really complicated, but John Searle is not a materialist, but he's a naturalist. So every materialist is a naturalist, but not every naturalist is a materialist, because materialism is a very specifically defined philosophical and metaphysical project. Right? It's a species of naturalism, but doesn't mean that that's why you could have somebody like John Searle, David Chalmers, and these people that think materialism is false. That's why you have the irreducibility of consciousness arguments developed, and they're all attempts to refute functionalism and the varieties of materialism. So that's what we're talking about. Then we went into I can remember obviously substance dualism, because that's the mind-body problem. We went into Gilbert Ryle's functionalism and whether like are those legitimate critiques of substance dualism. I think they are. Oh, cool. Somebody gives a shout out to my dear friend Bruce Sir from Fultz. I think I have that. We have talked about that, and he's a big uh, promoter of and appreciator of Eric Vogelin too. So we've had like in-depth conversations personally about anyways, so Gilbert Ryle's whole critique is that it's a category error to say I have a mind and a body. Now it's only so then I think Jacob had asked, well, is that a problem for us? And I'm like, well, I think orthodoxy is incompatible with substance dualism. That I think Gilbert Ryle is correct, and so is John Searle, that when you define the categories of mind and body in opposition so that they're incommensurate, then when you make a sentence, I have a mind and a body, it's a category error, absolutely. Now, Gilbert Ryle's way out of that is a type of materialism called functionalism. My thesis was an updated version of Aristotle's hylomorphism, because Aristotle, right, does not define, like Descartes, mind, soul, or soul, because the mind's a power of the rational soul, in opposition to the material body. Like, so I'm like, so that critique of Gilroy can't actually apply to, and this is what we talked about hylomorphism. And then we talked about, well, what the orthodox position is. And it can't be identical with Aristotelian hylomorphism because there's problems in that. The stuff that, and specifically we talked about what the Christological problems would be. And we actually talked in the class last night that the Aristotelian understanding of person and nature is exactly what leads to all the heresies. The monophysites, i.e., Miaphysitism, because Miaphysitism reduces it. The Nestorians, Roman Catholics as well, and Apollinarians all have the same, even though they go in different directions, and some actually saying, well, I'm not going in that direction. They all have the same fundamental erroneous presupposition and mistake that leads to, so we talked about that. And so then we were like, what would an orthodox theory of mind and body? And it's like, well, it's not kind of actually, nobody's kind of spelled out in kind of details. It would be somewhere between Platonic realism, because we believe we don't agree with Aristotle. We do believe universals are not simply created in the mind objectively, but they're independent of the mind. Something like Plato's realism, but we're not Platonic, Neoplatonic, and personalists, the way that we conceive universals. So it's somewhere between Aristotle's hylomorphism and Platonic realism. But beyond it's like, and then we talked about, and maybe we're not supposed to get autistic about the details. Maybe it's supposed to be something like the Eucharist, but like, I don't know, it's vaguely kind of sketch out, but you start getting the details exactly oftentimes when you end up in heresies that I could explain exactly. Substitute led to into all right, let's see if we have other. Super chats. The stream yesterday was talking about these things. Why are these ancient heresies on the rise? That was a good. I don't get this. What's this mean? Dude, this can't be right. What is supposed to be? Robin Sheep Orthodox? When you learn one thing living in Ireland for 70, when you see one of these, you turn the F around and leave. By the way, those look like Amanita muscaria. I So she's saying they're essential portals or ancestral realm of the faith. Are you kidding me, dude? Are there people who really believe this stuff? In Irish folklore. There's no way you can be Orthodox and believe. That's literally superstition. Do you know that, like, in some books, like Guide into Confessions, you actually have to go to confession for believing in this nonsense? Do you think that Orthodox believe in the superstitious, especially stuff associated with luck? And why is this lesbian sea bunny plus? Why is that even come? She must be somebody that commented on air. If it isn't even a she, ridiculous, dude. Yeah, I'm gonna click on that. That's what I was going to do. Follow the. What I understand is you can actually see before. Father Russell pointed this out to me when we were driving once. before the mushrooms grew, there's there's rings, right? I guess like the mycelium, is that what it's called? Underground will actually form a network in a. I think it's a perfectly natural explanation of why mushrooms grow in rings, and why you don't need to turn to stupid Irish folklore superstitions to. Yeah, cool story, dude. Of course, the demonic is real. So notice this kind of that, like, nobody's saying the demonic isn't real and there's not supernatural stuff. Superstition, stuff with the evil, like, why is it? And unfortunately, like, it comes into a lot of the cultures, superstition, and priests and the church have always had to fight against this. The evil eye, um, the very gospel story about the lunatic boy was a superstition, right? The demon, he was actually demon possessed and affecting the boy in the phases of the moon, because the demons were getting them to believe in a superstition that wasn't actually real, that it was the moon. So part of the problems with superstition and these folklore is it takes away, it gives too much power to the demonic, that God is not the Lord, right? That luck is misfortune. You see, you could be, you step in a mushroom ring and you turn into a goat. It's real because demons and goats are real. Yeah, exactly. But specifically, this notion of luck, bad luck, like a bird flew into my house and it's bad, like I stepped on a. It's giving power to the demonic that we actually believe that's beyond what they actually have, or that's not even true. That's why this stuff is condemned in orthodoxy. So silly. Who is this girl, dude? Whatever. What say you? What do you think? Yeah, Greeks and Romanians, some of these people, like, some of the superstitions that I've heard them say, I'm just like, yeah, fairy rings myth. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Hate to break it to you guys, Orthodoxy condemns superstitions and stupid folklore, stuff like that. Because why? It's not true, and it's a demonic actual creation to distract you from what actually is true. How much you want to bet all this stuff is like somehow tied back to like Kabbalistic BS from the Middle Age, the Renaissance, and stuff that influenced Orthodox? Couldn't you just see that the demonic Kabbalism crept into Orthodox countries and run the people? I mean, I seriously heard that, like, from Romanians once, they put salt in their pot because that blocks the evil eye. Now, what is interesting though, the evil eye is actually, if you read Magic Eros in the Renaissance, there actually is a philosophical theory. It's not as dumb as you actually think. There actually is. I'm not saying it's correct, but um, the whole book is the notion, especially in the Renaissance, that the blurring of like occultism and magic with science. That's what's a good and kind of a warning and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like the Romanian would like put salt. Like that's how how do you block the evil eye? Put salt in my pocket. See, that's what it blocks. It's the same thing as you brought up with like crystal magic. Like, um, now of course the opposite. It's always the royal path because a lot of this is reemerging because of reaction to atheistic materialism. That's why at the heyday of this stuff at the turn of the 18th and 19th century, you get a rise in spiritualism and the occult, like because at the same time in science, well, it's all mechanistic, atheistic kind of science. Uh, you know, it is true the ancients, in some sense, had a healthier mindset. The world was enchanted, like they understood the demonic. Uh, Demons could be attached to objects and stuff like that. But you have to understand, you let your faith guide you, right? The Orthodox faith, like, yeah, but how, where, and when, like, how does that actually work? Not like come up with folklore and superstitions in which we're giving powers to literally rocks, dude. And maybe they do, maybe it's like, maybe if that's true, obviously it's demonic and you shouldn't be messing with it. Yeah, so don't be pulling out crystals in my house. But yeah, yeah, did you hear about Annabelle and the guy dying? I do know that demons can attach to objects. And they do. That's not a weird. But like what theological or philosophical evidence that we have that mushroom rings that can be explained by the mycelium and how they grow um, are demon portals? That's what we should have brought that up with the Gnostic. Oh my gosh, dude. That's physics for you, yeah. How would you contrast? One's real and one's not. How that's Bill, that's a perfect answer to superstitions are either not real or they're going out of the domain of the church into demonic occultic stuff that you right. That's why we've given prayers. There's a prayer even to your guardian angel. It isn't a generic prayer like there was some story years back, some lady just improvisational praying to let she wanted her angel come into me and possess me or something like that. Well, she got an angel that possessed her, and it wasn't the one she was thinking about, right? So there's prescriptions on how to pray for reasons. Not like that's why you don't mess around with. I don't live in California. Did you know that? That's weird. Did you actually think I lived in California? I'm in Montana. I've been in Montana for 5 years. hence Orthodox Montanica. Yeah, he had the same temptation as the. By the way, mushrooms actually do that. It's animism. I remember taking mushrooms once. I think it was in Golden Gate Park or something, walking around. Well, I've had many of these experiences. I'm just pointing out one. And I was like, first of all, I was watching, like, everything begins to kind of move, becomes animated. And I was watching, like, there were like lilies or something, flowers. I forget what flower. And I was looking at them. I'm like, they're a lot beyond like biological. Like they were like moving and communicate. Like I could see. I'm all. They're possessed, is what I'm like, with some type of spirit or something like that. And then I was like, there was like a tree that had fallen over. You could like climb up into it, and like the kind of knots in the tree, it was a face. Like it had like cheekbones with a nose, and it started to be like, and I'm like, I've been in way farther out experiences where like everything was. I'll tell you this experience. It's actually a really interesting story. I was 18 years old, and they were like the strongest mushrooms that we'd ever taken, and it was so stupid too that I did, like, just shows you where my stupid priorities were. We went to this party, this house party, and I met a girl there, and she was just like really very attractive, pretty girl, and she obviously, obviously, it happened to be that she really liked me, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I'll, meet this girl, and then I heard over somebody at the party was like, "Oh, I took these mushrooms." But I was like, "What?" He was like, "Well, it's the strongest mushrooms I've ever taken in my life." And I left the girl, and I was like, "I want to buy some of those mushrooms." And so stupid. I idolized a drug over a actual human relationship. That was my first mistake. And so then I grabbed my friends, and I'm like, "Hey man, let's go out to Holy Jim Canyon." And there was this. It was a way to get out of kind of like Orange County, back in like Silverado area. Holy Jim. Interesting enough, Holy Jim is named after some Roman Catholic saint, like dude. Um, there's a whole story you could look up about that, but it was cool. It's like you could. I mean, you had to drive way out, like on this dirt road to get, and then we would camp out. And I don't even know if it was legally you could camp out, but like it was so far out that nobody, like, so hard to get to on a dirt road that nobody would ever bother you. Um, we took these mushrooms and took the mushrooms, got our guitars and like camping stuff, and they were way too strong. Like they, thank God I brought four people, because if I would have just two people, would have just, I can't even imagine what. Um, and you're in trouble when it like everything starts melting in like 20 minutes. You're like, oh no, like we're already at 20 minutes and is this bad? And so what happened is we had one of my friends. We had a water bottle and he set on it in the seat and it broke on his pants all wet or something. And it wasn't a big deal. When we get to the spot, and what was really weird is like I couldn't walk. Like I'd never had this experience before. Felt drunk. So not only were the the colors were starting to go, I was like, whoa, like I had like vertigo. I was like, whoa, I can't even. I'm all, this is, I haven't had this experience before. They were really strong. And so we got our little Duraflame log out. And this story is so funny. Um, so my buddy Chris and Andy. So Andy, background story, Andy has since passed away. I think he had a heart attack, actually, interesting enough. We're at a time in our life where we're trying to, we're just out of high school. We're trying to figure all this stuff out. Um, and I remember that's when I was first introduced to conspiracy theories. And they kind of oddly kind of match stuff that we were taught about end times and weird stuff in evangelicalism. But anyways, Andy was seeing a literal witch. That was telling him like she was practiced witchcraft. And she was into like, oh, like some of these conspiracy theories, like, about the Illuminati, and like this was 18 years old the first time I'd like heard about this stuff. That there's elites controlling this and the dangers of technology, the calcification of the pineal gland, and they're sending out, these signals to dumb you down. So almost it was really interesting, almost like the 5G stuff. She was already talking about like in 1996 that this is why you got to get out into nature and you got to take these psychedelics and you break through the elites kind of mind control through like it was all kind of that background. Anyways, Chris and I and Andy were Christians. My other friend, God, I'm trying to remember his name, Nick, was a Christian, but there was this weird like thing that happened. I don't know all the details about it, but supposedly he had a mental break, or like years earlier, and he ended up in a mental institute, and it was about God, like it was something about, and he came out an atheist, like he associated his belief in God with his psychological break. Okay, so we're all now together, right? And we're just like it's just getting stronger and stronger. And we first, get our guitars out, and I couldn't even play, um, because I was like trying to tune it. It was like, I'm like, what? Like, and then it was shrinking, like, because I just picked up my guitar from having it worked on at the shop, and I started thinking, I'm like, oh no, I grabbed the wrong. I think they gave me the wrong guitar, because all of a sudden it was like this little tiny mandolin, and I was like, obviously it's not my guitar. And then it was like, now it's a bass. Like it was just everything was like fluid, and I couldn't play, dude. Like I can't even. Everything was just melting into it, the sounds. And then my buddy Chris, who's a really good guitar player, dude, he started playing this stuff like I've never even heard before. And I was amazed. We were like just blown. Like he was just like, and like his eyes kept rolling in the back of the head. I was like, dude, what is happening to him? And it was amazing music. And I'm like, dude, Chris, what do you do? Where do you come up with that? And he looked at me and he said, it's not me. He's like, I'm not playing. He's like, I don't actually know. And I'm like, all right, I need you. I remember seeing him like, I don't want to hear any more of that kind of talk. That's actually really scary. He's like, dude, I'm not. And he was like, he would kind of go in and out of like sobriety. Like he'd be like clear and it was him. And then he would kind of be like, and he wasn't playing. It was something else in him. And then he was talking about a queen on a throat. Like it was just really weird lyrics. And I was like, seriously, I'm over this. Like, I don't know what's going on, but so we put and I couldn't even play. And I'm noticing my friend Nick, and he just keeps rubbing his pants, right? He's tripping on the fact that he's wet, which probably feels uncomfortable. And I'm kind of just like, what's going on with Nick? And I can see it's progressing. And then we put away the guitars, and then Chris and Andy start having a fight. Like, Chris decides he's going to have a theology conversation right when we're losing our minds. And he says, Andy, you're going to hell. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, Andy, you're seeing a witch. I don't know how much more clear. He's like, you're consulting a witch. He's like, yeah, but what she's saying true. So they started like having this huge fight in the middle, this theological fight about hell. And I was like, oh, man, this is crazy. And then they were like, hey, man, we're not supposed to talk about this stuff in front of Nick. I was like, what's up with Nick? They were like, yeah, yes, in a mental institution because of this stuff. And I can see, obviously, Nick's there and he can hear it. I'm like, dude, he can hear you. So they were like, let's have this they were getting really upset with each other. Chris and Andy were like, let's have this conversation, like, away from, Nick. And so they go out, and I can hear them yelling and arguing about theology in the woods. We're 18 years old this time. This is funny. And Nick's now, like, totally becoming uncomfortable. Like, he's sitting in the fire. I'm like, yeah, you can't sit in the fire, dude. He's like, my pants, dude, my pants. Like, he's just tripping. He was like trying to dry him out on the fire. And I'm like, you're sitting in the fire, dude. And I could hear Chris and Andy in the background. And they're screaming at each other. Now my imagination's taken, like, I could have sworn, like, it sounded like, because I could hear branches breaking. And this is like at 11, it's late at night, so you can't see anything. And I was like, dude, is he hitting him? And then I hear this, rah! And I'm like, oh my God. The theology, like, and I could visualize everything. And I was like, I could picture him with an axe, like, cutting Andy. And I'm like, oh no. So now I'm starting to unravel, right? And become uneasy. Then I got a thought came into my mind that just threw me. I remember the Calvary Chapel, there was this pastor, Odin Fong, that would come in and I hadn't thought about this for a really long time, and it just came to me because where I was at. He talked about, it was probably because they were arguing about a witch. That's what, that the thought came in. I was like, oh no. I remember Odin Fong and people talking about, like, there's all kinds of occultic activity back in those hills. Black Star Canyon, Silverado, and a lot of those places kind of in the hills have that. Like, Ojai had weird stuff when we were in, like, druids and witches and stuff like that. And I remember the story that was given, and, he was preaching about once. He was like, don't go back there, and, like, there's weird occultic stuff. And I was like, oh, that's exactly where we are. Whoops. Then I was, like, thinking about psychedelics, and I was like, I knew, even at 18 years old, it was somewhat dangerous. Like, it's the spiritual realm. Like, you open and I'm like, oh no. What if it's like, I'm in their domain? That's what I thought. All of this has a good theological message. I'm not just telling a story. I'm going to relate it back to why I think this stuff's dangerous and what you actually experience. I got the thought that it's actually really quite possible and probable that because I'm in the noetic realm, in their domain, and there's witches here, I'm a Christian. I knew that. I always believed, even through this, the one thing I never departed, even if I was a Protestant, was the Trinity and Christ incarnate. Like, I held to those kind of fundamentals always, and it probably saved me. That's why I was like, I never got into weird shit. I'm like, no, that's demonic. Like, I knew that because I had a kind of core that I held to, and I wouldn't give that up. So I thought, I'm like, they're the enemy, and they see me as enemy. They're gonna attack me. And as soon as I had that thought, like a breeze came through the trees, like one of those gusts of winds out of nowhere, like, was like, whoa. And it came back the other direction. I was like, what? The other direction. It wasn't blowing in one And I'm like, oh man, I'm starting to feel really weird. And it's getting more and more intense, the experience and the hallucinations. And I swear I thought somebody put wind chimes up there because I could hear like wind chimes going. And I'm like, God, that seems even kind of weird and occultic, right? Like your mind just keeps going on these thoughts. And all of a sudden I started hearing voices like, wow, up in the trees. And I was like, oh no. And they were coming down. So what happens when the wind was blowing through? And that was that enchantedness, right? Like nature all of a sudden started to become possessed, is what I'm trying to tell you. That I'm like, there's a spirit in the trees, and there's voices up there. And when the wind blew through, the leaves, some of the leaves would fall, right? And I was watching them kind of like fall. And then all of a sudden, it's like, it was weird. It was like on one side, it was the visible leaf. And when it flipped, it was translucent. You couldn't see it. And it was coming in and out of reality like that. It was like, and there I was watching, everything was kind of like slowing down. And when it came here and turned to Lisa, it was a voice. It would be like, wow. And it was saying stuff to me. And I could hear it in my ears. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was saying messed up stuff. It was threatening. And it said, we have your soul. We're coming after you. Like, it'd be like, we have your soul. But I was like, oh my God. And I felt people blowing on me too. That was the other thing too. I'd never experienced. And I'm like, there's people all around me. And then I started looking, and just like the tree example that I gave, I was looking in the tree, and now like all the stuff of the bark and stuff, right, was not only moving. There were tracers, like they were coming out. There was like levels of, and they were moving too, and there were different colors, right? There were these kind of vibrant colors, and it was all kind of following this kind of Aztec pattern, right? Like, and then I was like, dude, there's people in the freaking patterns of the in the tree and stuff. And there were like these weird, like kind of shaman Indians. And I remember this guy had like one of those things that had like the where it has the like he had a snake in one hand, and then it was this weird shaman like in the tree and the colors and everything. And I was totally there, like, and he had this thing where it was like almost like a rattler with those drums. It was like, and he was like, and it would come out and in, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I looked in the fire. There were faces screaming in the like the gaps between the fire and the air. When they were all faces, dude. It was screaming like everything started moving. There wasn't a single thing that was still at this point. Everything started to melt into, and they were all faces and possessed. Like it was, and I was absolutely terrified. Um, and I actually lost consciousness. Like it just everything started swirling like around and melting into, and then I was out. It was dark. I couldn't see anything. There was nothing moving anymore. I couldn't see trees around me. It was just like you were consciousness, like in darkness. And it was awful. I felt things going in and out. Things were still moving. It was demonic. In and out of my soul. And when they would go in, it felt like I remember the experience of like if you heard really bad news, that gut wrenching, or if you did something really bad, like just something horrendous, horror, soul horror. It was coming in, and it was just I was like like I was like I'm in hell, like I was in absolute hell. And that was like psilocybin, like it was the strongest. I'd never, I'd taken pretty good, like nothing like that. And um it was one of the most scary things that I've ever experienced in my life. And then I had thought, remember we're talking about attentiveness, and I'm like, I got distracted. I said to myself in the darkness, I'm like, you're a child of God. They don't own you. I said, Christ is your Savior. And all they got you to do is to all demons can do is get you to fear by taking your eyes off the cross and Christ. And I really, it just came to me. I'm like, you don't own me, and all you can get me. That's why scripture says more than anything, fear not. And I just noetically like envisioned a cross, and I embraced it. I was just like, nothing can touch. Like, I'm a child of God. Like, God owns me. Nothing you can do. Swear to goodness, as soon as I did that, and I just embraced with all my being, right? And this is where I was at, was in my nous, right? There was no more sensation, like sensual, like experiences or hallucinations or anything. I went to the heart of hearts, and I encountered Christ. I'm like, there he is. He's always been there. I'm like, and as soon as I embraced that with my whole being, and it's very similar to like how you pray the Jesus prayer too, like where you eliminate everything else, and it's just your soul immediately pressed on God, right? No visuals, no thoughts, just there, your entire being. It's not mediated. That's what actually happened. And as soon as that happened, I was like, I came out of it. And I wasn't even hallucinating anymore. I was like, and I look over at my friend Nick. I can hear Chris and Andy still screaming and fighting in the woods somewhere. And Nick is in fetal position, screaming and crying for his mother. He's 19-year-old kid in absolute terror. I don't even know what he was. And it was crazy because I was like, I got it. And I picked him up in my arms, like, and I'm like, peace be with you. Like, I'm like, shh. I'm like, it's really emotional. I said something to him. I just said a word. I'm like, I want you to listen. I said, Jesus Christ. He was like, what? I said, listen to what I'm saying. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, he loves you. And he started to come out of the terror. He was like, yeah. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, he loves you. I'm like, listen to those words. And then I yelled out to my friends, forgive me. I'm like, Chris, Andy, come back down. I'm like, I figured it out. And I said the same thing. I'm like, stop. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, just the words. It's the noetic prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. At 18 years old, before I even knew anything about orthodoxy, I was saying the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ. And it calmed. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, none of this stuff mattered. Where I'm like, Lord Jesus Christ, right? And it silenced everybody. It brought them out of the discord. It brought them out of the horror. I'm like, that's it. That's the answer. I'm like, all of this confusion. I'm like, Jesus Christ. He's Lord and he loves us. Like, that's it. There's no more to, it's finished. Like, that's, and I remember right after that peace came, two doves flew over, and there was like this mist, obviously, there was some still hallucinations left because there were like trace or mist coming over and it felt like just warm. But what Nick we were talking was really interesting. He said something that blew my mind. He says there's no such thing as an atheist. The atheist said there's no such thing as an atheist. He's like, you take them to the abyss, which is exactly where we went. He's like, all those stupid ideas, Like, there's no way that you can deny God. And I'm like, yeah. You know, I was talking with somebody that was doubting God's existence and wanted to know, like, what's the argument? I'm like, I have these doubts. I'm like, I can be real. There's good news and bad news. The answer is actually really easy, but the answer you're not gonna. I'm like, I clear this up right away, right? I thought I was gonna bring up some awesome philosophical. I'm like, extreme suffering and torment. On my I'll clear up my always stupid idea. And like, that's what Nick said, 18 years old in 1996, that there are no atheists. Once you're there at the abyss and the horror, like, you just see it clear as day. And he became a Christian. I remember seeing him years later, and I'm like, we just kind of looked at each other like, remember? um, a lot of experiences like that, and but what I wanted to bring up is, in light of that, um, isn't that interesting? The mushrooms produce an enchanted. They always have that feeling of, whether it was kind of like Irish or Norse folklore, it was animism in inanimate and vegetative things, where everything became its possession. Like, I don't know what else to say. And that's an extreme. Thank God he protected us and saved us from. Think about what a dangerous place to actually be. And I don't know why that happened. Like, why me protected and others lose, other than realizing that, like the gospel story of the paralytic, and he saw their faith. It wasn't about the paralytic. It wasn't about me. It's about the salvation of the world. How that all works, I have no idea. Right? How we cooperate with it, I don't. It's a mystery. I don't know. But unfortunately, you know, I was wayward on that psychedelic for a while, because I was just like, well, what a great apologetics program this is. Like, how easy. I don't even have to give any arguments to you. I'll just give them, like, um, huge doses of psychedelics, and, like, obviously, they'll just have to come. And I did that for a while. I would give, and I'd sit there, because I was just being introduced to apologetics and philosophy, and I'd be like, all right, let's sit down and talk about your atheism and the arguments for the existence of God. Now that wasn't right, but I didn't know. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing. It took me some while to, like, because I saw how easy. The problem is they're open and like, that's not. You want people to come to God and the saving faith for the right reasons, right? I want MK Ultra people be like, well, I got everybody to believe in God in my state, in my city. Well, how'd you do that? Well, I just learned stuff from the CIA and dosed them and, like, turned them into, like, obviously. How stupid of me for thinking that, like, this is an awesome way to, like, the new evangelism and apologetics program here. Um, so God forgive me for, I was trying to figure this stuff out. I didn't have the church. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. Um, so it took me a while before I realized, I'm like, okay, this is dangerous. I shouldn't be messing around with. Part of that was because my dear friend, lost his mind. And they said that they believed that the large amounts of psychedelics are using, was a catalyst for his psychological break in schizoaffective. But that was one of the reasons, is, like, I watched my friend disintegrate mentally, and the torment that he went in from. And it was so stupid and arrogant about me. I remember, I'm like, I'm glad that my mind's stronger than everybody else's, that I don't break. How stupid. Thank God he didn't allow me to. I'm like, I don't know why he lost it, but obviously, just some people aren't tough. Well, wait a minute. And this kind of led me out. Suppose that were true, which it isn't. How do you know if somebody like you're giving this like these crazy substances to people? You don't know if they'll break. I remember I was dating a girl that I was engaged to. Ended up giving her like LSD at some reggae concert or something, dude. And she had like a break and had some psychological. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is actually dangerous. Um, so it didn't matter about like, oh, if you're strong enough, which isn't true mentally. It's like like you don't know what like somebody's psyche, their history is. People lose their minds and don't come back, like, or they have lingering psychological effects from. I think that kind of helped. I'm like, well, obviously, this is not how you do apologetics. Everybody's in a mental institution now because your stupid apologetics program. Um. Anyways, thank you for. I did say there's a theological. I have countless stories like that that were like really amazing and scary, and but there's a theological lesson in that. That's why I'm like, this dude, you think I don't know what you're doing and what these experiences are? You know, hands down, I probably went way farther out into that stuff longer than you ever did. So you're not gonna have lecture me on that it's not inebriating and not dangerous. Yeah, it's offensive, huh? Like, are you kidding me? Yeah, there are no atheists in foxholes. Anyways, good stream, good conversations. It's good to shed some tears. It's profound. Like, it's profound the reality of the demonic realm, and it's deeply profoundly moving the power of God, like, and God's providence in your life. That's what these are real experiences. Um, they're trauma. It's trauma too. That's the other thing. Like shedding tears because I have to when I talk about this, I have to relive, go back to my 18-year-old self and be like, remember what happened and how God's hand was still, despite my errors, there leading me and saving me. That's emotional. Like it would be weird, I think, if I didn't shed some tears and I'd be disconnected from. And I think it's always good. I always encourage people, um, take inventory. It's good that you emotionally get connected back to the very feeling of where you were at in different times of your lives and put that into the kind of divine cosmic perspective of like where God's taken you. It's good to stop and take inventory of your life. Feel the pain. Like, don't block that out. That's part of who you are in God's story in your life. And if you just make it cognitive, like it's dead, like it's just another fact. So I try to do that, go back to painful points in my life and see it within the context of God's providence and where He's brought you. Um, it reminds you how we have a good God who loves mankind and what He's doing in your life. And it's motivating too to like keep up keep up the good fight, finish the race, like do it, see what's God done in your life, and that He continues, that He won't leave you, even in the pits of hell, with the demons tormenting there. God was with me and He saved me. And even in death, in the pit, He'll be there, which is why Christ says to the good thief when he confesses, remember me in your kingdom, He says, today you will be with me in paradise. Now the pit doesn't look like paradise, with right, the worst place, death, the pit, Sheol. What is He saying? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you're at. You're in the pit. I am paradise. You're with me. Nothing can touch you. So let that soak into your mind and your soul. Let it not distract you from the goal. Fear not. Christ says over and over again, fear not. Peace be with you. And with that, God bless you guys. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for the super chats and donations. Until tomorrow, God bless.